Welcome to our monthly reconnection call with Finding Our Way. For those of you who don't know, I am Robin and my colleague Lee. And the whole purpose of these monthly calls, why I've set this up, is kind of a place to remind ourselves once a month on the first Sunday of the month to kind of just make time for ourselves, because we can get busy and out there and doing stuff, and sometimes we just need a reminder, myself included, Lee included, to just stop and look after ourselves. So this call will be recorded. It will go up on our website, which we are nearly finished putting together. So it's findingourway.life or findingourway.space. If you want to have a look at it, it's not quite finished, but we'll welcome any feedback on that as well. But yes, this recording will go up there as well. And our focus this month is actually about healthy boundaries. And the reason that kind of came up is we're thinking of the last 2 months of the year. We kind of get caught up sometimes in just running ahead and not really noticing where we are. So like the Christmas stuff starts happening and the presents and all the rest. So you just kind of get busy in it. And so it's just about making time to be aware of where we are and our boundaries around that. And thanks to you also for starting the chat. So as you can see, you can chat on the side and we'll be picking it up as well. So thank you all for joining. And as we do with all our Finding Our Way stuff, we usually start with some breathing or some connection. So I think Lee's going to lead us off to start with.
Yeah. So welcome everybody. Good evening from my side of the world, and I think from the UK folks. I'm coming from Badalona, which is close to Barcelona. And before the session, I went for a lovely walk and was just kind of giving some thought to what I wanted to also share this evening, and how important it is just to be grounded before you start anything with whatever you're doing. So we're going to start our session just really making yourself very, very comfortable. And if you're sitting down or if you're in a chair or on a cushion or whatever, just really claiming and owning your space wherever you are. Making sure that you're comfortable, readjusting your position if you need. And we're not going to do something very long, but just a few moments of really mindful breathing, which you can do at any time. It's not just, before something like this, but this is creating the habit of doing this before you start anything, even starting your day or starting a piece of work you're busy with, or whatever you need to just really become very present. So just sitting comfortably. I'm sitting cross-legged. I've got my hands on my knees. And just really checking in with yourself, feeling very grounded and connected and rooted. So I always like to visualize the earth, the great mother, just kind of holding us very gently, but also with strength and with presence. So just feeling very cradled and nurtured by that loving earth energy, and becoming really grounded in your whole being. It's very useful just to visualize roots that are going into the earth, because that just helps to bring you really clearly into a space. And just taking a really deep and nourishing breath, really drawing that energy from the earth. So breathing in, we're going to breathe in for 4 counts. We're going to hold for 4, and then breathe out very slowly, sort of very leisurely, for 8 counts. So we'll just breathe in for 4, hold for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathing out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then just breathing in for 4, holding for 4, and breathing out for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to do that again without counting, just holding for 4, and breathing out very slowly for 8. Just letting your breathing become really natural again. And just noticing if there's any difference when you start to slow down your breathing and you're becoming more mindful and more present of your breathing. And you can repeat this. It's very helpful with breathing out very slowly, because that just slows down the rushing mind, the crazy mind, and helps to make you very, very present. Just feeling the sensation on the top of your crown, the back of the neck, your heart, the pelvic region, and just where you're sitting. Just kind of being very aware that it's almost like a pile of coins all the way from the roots all the way to the top of the head, which always helps to straighten the body. And really just setting the intention for this session. It's just a short call, but this is really something that we can be very generous and take good care of ourselves, to check in with ourselves, even if it's for 5 minutes a day, just to take the time. So just very mindfully setting the intention for what you want out of this session, whatever it is. If it's more clarity, or just a little space to rest, a little space to nourish yourself. Whatever it is you need out of this for you. So for today's session, we wanted to chat very briefly about boundaries, and Robin and I were just talking before, and I think it's really important for us to recognize what boundaries are. It's such a loaded word that we use so loosely, and especially for women, there's often talk about, oh, we need more boundaries, or you need to set your boundaries stronger. But maybe just to take a moment, and again, just closing your eyes and checking in with yourself. And if it helps to put your hand at your heart, sometimes that's a very nice exercise, just to become really present and to connect to yourself. Just to take a moment to ask yourself what boundaries are, what boundaries mean to you. And just becoming very mindful also of, does that mean that you're pushing away or that you're closing in? Just that sensation of what the idea of setting a healthy boundary for yourself means.
And is it a chalk line? Is it a chalk line, or is it a 6-foot high fence?
And I was just saying to Robin before that I saw a lovely visual of, if you're sort of standing in a circle, or you're I'm from South Africa originally, so we have a lot of high fences in my country, and we really very mindfully keeping people out, protecting ourselves very strongly. So we've got barbed wire and fences and all these kinds of things. And I was thinking about that for oneself, also how we deal with different situations. Are we building these huge fences, or are we setting a gentle boundary? Have we got a circle of flowers around us, or a pretty fence, but you can still allow something in, but you've clearly set the parameter.
If you want to share, feel free to write it in the chat, but don't feel kind of compelled to do that either. Just about, because this is very much about your personal boundaries. It's not that someone has it right and you have it wrong. It's totally what's personally for you.
There was a few, was something I was reading earlier this week, and this was quite a nice way of phrasing it, because I think it's quite difficult for us as women often to set boundaries, and even the word boundary can seem very harsh for some people, or something that we, kind of think, oh, but we've got to be generous, we've got to be open, we've got to be available for people all the time. But this was quite good to reconfirm or affirm that good, decent people set boundaries. It's not something that's a bad thing necessarily. It's not something where you're being selfish or you're being hard. And establishing the boundaries makes you a safe person. And that also helps people to understand where they stand with you, which is something that's quite different, because we are communicating clearly. So people also understand what the boundaries are. If we aren't clear at communicating what the boundaries are, then it's very difficult for people to understand. We think we're communicating, but maybe we're not being clear about how we're communicating what boundaries are. And also that boundaries allow others to grow, because it also makes them so conscious of their behavior. So that's also something that where you're actually being very generous, being very clear with setting your boundaries very clearly. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Robin.
Yeah, I just think it's about to say, I think there's a thing where, also about, there's the boundaries of kind of the energetic boundaries, like, how much are you giving and how much you're receiving. So there's something around how much of that is around you. But there's also around how much time you're giving to something. The boundary of time, like, actually I only have half an hour for you rather than, half a day. Or there might even be boundaries around physical space. Like, actually, can you just move over there a little bit, or I need to go into my own space right now. So I think there's lots of different ways to view those boundaries too. And I think it's an interesting one, because I think also for women, we often take a lot of other people's stuff on. And to me, that's a boundary too. Like, we don't even realize, like, there's almost a merging of them and us. And we don't acknowledge that this is maybe their shit coming this way, and actually I can stop it, and it's not my stuff to have just here. And so I think there's something around that acknowledgement that boundaries can be in lots of different ways, and it's just about, for you, what does it look like today, and that might be different than what you need tomorrow. If I'm feeling really well, then probably my energetic boundary will come in. I can probably have people closer to me, I can probably have more people in a row that I'm going to deal with. But if I'm feeling tired or deflated, then maybe I'll need more space, physical space around me to look after myself. I might need more time to do that. I might need to physically remove myself and look after that too. So I think it's important to be aware of, as we always talk about, like, in this moment, what does my boundaries look like? It's and for me only, and that tomorrow that might be different. But yeah, it's in this moment, what do I need?
Definitely. I think it's also really about becoming very, very conscious about what you need, as you're saying, at different times, and being conscious, really about being conscious about what your needs are clearly, because we often have a sort of vague idea, but unless we pause and really reflect on that, and that might be in a daily, on a daily basis. It might be when you wake up in the morning, if you've got to do something really difficult or something challenging. How do you set your boundaries for that day, or for that particular meeting or that interaction? So I think it's really very helpful to not rush, and maybe not overthinking it sometimes, but also really allowing yourself to stop. So we can be so generous with ourselves with just a few moments, and that could make all the difference in how you approach something, or how you're kind to yourself, really, in that way. As we say kindfulness here, not mindfulness, we say kindfulness.
And I think, as Sam says on the chat, like, it's living, breathing boundaries, because we're living, breathing humans that change moment to moment, that we're not this rigid thing that, so like putting a fence up might be what we need one day because we're feeling really vulnerable, and actually just today I need that fence because I need my safety here. But that fence doesn't have to stay there forever, because actually that will potentially harm relationships long term, and so maybe it's even acknowledging that maybe over time, to feel safe, you have had to put up a fence brick by brick by brick, and acknowledge that maybe now you can start taking that fence down brick by brick by brick because of the safety you're feeling. So again, acknowledging that over time you may be behind walls, but that doesn't have to be the way that it always is, and that you can maybe start taking down the bricks and start putting around the flowers or whatever. And I like, so I was going to say, and Sarah, I don't know, Sarah, but it's around the protecting your space for yourself. I think that's really important for women as well, is actually just knowing that right now I need silence, or right now I need reflection, or right now I just need to look after myself, and that might be a bath or a walk or whatever that is. And it's not just saying, one thing I was talking about recently with Lee was around the boundaries of yes and no. Like what you're saying yes to means you're saying no to something else. So even just acknowledging that the more you're saying yes to something, your boundaries are going that way, and that you maybe need to say no to a few things to bring that boundary back to yourself, to kind of look after yourself. And for me, it's just it always starts with acknowledgement of where you are now. So if you're feeling that you don't have a space for yourself, it's just saying to someone, actually, every night I'm going to be turning off from whatever at 7 o'clock. And even just acknowledging that as you go through is just saying, for me, tomorrow night, I'm not going to be available at this time. And it doesn't mean that forever you're not going to do that, but maybe for the next day or two or the week that you need that space. So we all need to be aware of even just setting those things. It doesn't need to be in the way forever, but just right now, I can't help you till after, tomorrow morning, because after 7 o'clock, I'm going to have my own space.
And I think it's helpful to let people know, because often, we're so polite, or so, you try not to hurt someone else's feelings. I'm really bad at that. I can be, I can sometimes take on more because I have capacity. I know I have capacity, but what limits me is my health. So often if my health starts saying, if something starts flaring up or something, then I know I've gone over my boundary. Mm-hmm. So that's a very good indicator. But if you're not listening to yourself, if you're not becoming mindful and not checking in, you don't want it to get to the stage of where you're completely depleted, where you're running for 2 days nonstop and then you collapse. So it's that balance again. But the more and more, I guess, as the older I get, it feels that you can sense when you need to slow down. So you start listening to yourself, and that's only something that you can do for yourself, to listen to yourself, to take the time to listen to yourself, and to be very open to seeing the signs, not ignoring that, because when you're checking in with yourself, even if it's helpful to put your hand on your heart to check in, what do I need right now? What is this that I need? Or breathing for a few moments, just what do I need right now? And that can take a second. We often don't make time for that, but it could literally just be a few seconds to do that, and that can make such a big difference and can have such a huge impact.
And I think it's kind of funny, because as you're talking, I'm thinking there's kind of that paradox, isn't it? Because if we aren't making time for ourselves, the way to become aware to make time for ourselves is to make time for ourselves. So it's around not making sometimes maybe it is those small things, though. It's just the daily practice of maybe just putting your hand on the heart at some point during the day and going, what do I need? Yeah. And through that practice comes of, I need more space for myself. Okay, that's what I need to be doing now. So it's kind of a little bit of the chicken or the egg, which one's coming first. But I think there's something around this, if it's just a reminder on your phone which says, how are you doing? Yeah, that will bring you back to, how am I doing? And then you can start deciding what boundaries you need and what spaces you need. But it definitely, for me anyway, it starts with it being aware of where you are, to then know what else you need to do to kind of create those boundaries. Because if we're going along mindlessly, we don't even know that boundary is being overstepped until we get really angry or something, and then we're like, why am I pissed off? And it's because someone's overstepped a boundary, but you weren't even aware of it because you were just kind of doing it in the moment. So you kind of do need those stopping points to kind of look at those boundaries.
Yeah. Definitely.
Is there anything for you, Lee, that you've learned? You're talking about, getting older and wiser. We're also older and wiser here, day by day.
I think the lesson that just comes through more and more is that you need to be confident that you know yourself. that you know what you need, and not to be afraid to own that, in a sense, because you really know. I think as women, our intuition is very strong when we listen to it. When we don't listen, then when we sort of, oh, we can't really deal with that right now, the little voice, or however you however that speaks to you. So I think more and more becoming more present and aware, and keeping it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. You don't have to make it a big deal. It can just be something that, okay, I really need to take this time for myself now, and that's okay. I can do this. I can take this time for myself, and I'm not being selfish. And that's takes practice. That's only practice, but that's more and more, you actually become more effective and more productive when you are taking those moments to pause and to check in with yourself about what your boundaries are, and to make sure that the boundaries are healthy. I think that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
What are the healthy boundaries? You don't be superwoman. we can
it's healthy for you and healthy for others. I think that's another thing to look at too, because it's definitely around you, but actually, as you're saying, other people, especially like with children, they like to know where they stand.
Yes.
Like, am I allowed to do this? Am I not allowed to do this? And as humans, as we grow up, we still want to know, can we do this or can we not do this? Like, is it okay for me to give you a call or a text at 2 a.m? No, it's not. Kind of like people don't know that, because if you've always done it, then people are like, oh, this is okay. I can, if I email this person, they'll get back to me within 5 minutes or whatever. So it's the expectation is to come from both places of, the boundary for you and the boundary for others, so they know where they stand as well.
Yeah. We can't work from empty. I think that's more and more we need to recognize. The world is everything is so fast. Everything is so overstimulating, and you can't work from empty. It's just common sense, really. You can't work from empty. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate these ideas so much and make it another burden on ourselves, when actually it doesn't have to be so complicated. It's just a yes or no. I think that's very clear, just a yes or no kind of answer.
Yeah. And I think the thing still something I learned years ago is that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So it's you have to remember that too, that if you keep saying yes to something else, then there will be a no associated with, and that's okay. Like, you can't keep saying yes to everything and expect that there'll be yeses to everything. We aren't limitless in energy or time or space or anything really. And actually that's our challenge as a planet at the moment, is there's no limit. We have to put some limits on our stuff, really. So we've got to start realizing that when we're saying yes to something, we're actually saying no to something else at the same time.
Definitely. I think it's always about, I always come back to the idea of in Asian philosophy, they always have the two aspects of this compassion, where you're being unendingly or endlessly kind, endlessly generous and available and kind, and it's always about service. But there's the other part of it too, which is the wisdom part. So it's always like the two wings of a bird. You can't have the one that's imbalanced, because the bird can't fly. So you need to have the wisdom and the discernment to be able to bring these two aspects together. So it's the wisdom about knowing what your boundaries are, knowing what your limits are, and that's okay, and not having this whole guilt feeling about that, and at the same time still staying open and compassionate, so that you can be compassionate with yourself and compassionate with others, but it's with this healthy balance of the wisdom aspect. So it's not just one-sided. Then that makes it more complete, and you can feel more confident in that you're not letting someone down, or you're not excluding anybody.
I think that's a lovely time to, I wouldn't mind just taking a couple of minutes, whether you have pen and paper next to you for a journal, or you just want to do this silently in your head, or write it on the comments or whatever. Because Lee and I very much of, again, these things are ideas, but how do we then actually put them into practice? So what's our integration in our life to actually do this? And we're probably not going to, in the next week or the next month or even the next year, be able to change our boundaries for everything. But what's one little step that you would like to take forward in the next few weeks? What does a healthy boundary look like for you? Is it with a certain individual that you want to look at? Is it around your time? Is it around making time for you? So we're just going to go silent for a minute or two and so either write down yourself, write in the chat, just think it internally. What is the boundary that you're going to look at coming up the next week or so? What would it look like for you to embody it? And what's the outcome you're going to look for?
And if it helps as well, I know that sometimes it helps. I'm quite a visual person, so sometimes it helps even to draw that or to put something that really symbolizes that to you. And even if you take that little image and stick it up somewhere where you can see that, just to remind yourself.
And what we'll do to finish off, just to keep drawing or writing, whatever you do, just want to let you know what's going to happen in the next few minutes. So we'll do a short little meditation around kind of reminding ourselves what a healthy boundary might look and feel like. We will then, I will then pull a card. So those of you who have worked with Lee and I before, we have a range of cards with words on it that just allow us to kind of bring ourselves back to ourselves. So after the meditation, I'll pull a card, and we'll just do kind of a final breathing to finish off. So if there's anything that you want to say or write down now to the group, then please do. Otherwise, we'll go through the meditation and the closing. And that our next reconnection call is again on the first Sunday of the month. So it's on the 1st of December. And we're actually talking about pace. So how do we pace ourselves in the lead up to Christmas? How do we find that pace that works for us, that is sustainable and nourishing and not frantic? Not the London walking pace, the countryside walking pace. So anyways, thanks all for joining us. We'll just go to a little meditation here. So closing your eyes, putting down your pens, sitting comfortably. And as Lee said, kind of thinking about those roots going into the ground, Mother Earth holding us, sitting up straight. Really become aware of yourself sitting in this space. And feel kind of energetically where you're at. Do you have a big space around you that you're filling up? Are you feeling full and your heart's up and your chest's proud and your energy's wide? Are you feeling a little bit more closer to yourself today? Are you protecting yourself and your energies just around you? Wherever you are, just acknowledge where it's sitting, where you're sitting. Taking a few deep breaths in and really feeling yourself and feeling where you are and where your energy is. And wherever your energetic kind of boundary is, just feel as though there's a bubble around that space. A clear white light filling, surrounding you in your energetic space. And it's there to protect you. Anything can go from you outside, the good, the bad, indifferent. But this is your boundary of safety, and it's protecting you and making you safe. So negative stuff can just bounce right off. Thank you very much. And as you sit there and acknowledge that space, think about for you, as you've just written or drawn or embodied, how can you have this safe bubble going into the coming weeks? When do you need to make sure that this energetic, safe place for you is up? Is it when you leave the house? Is it when you go to work? Is it when you have a discussion with a colleague that you find difficult to work with? Know that whenever you need it, you can come back to yourself. Take a few deep breaths, acknowledge where you are, and then put this bubble of safety around you. So again, sitting up straight, filling yourself completely. Filling your bubble with good vibes. Take 3 deep breaths in and out. One final big breath in and out. And opening your eyes. And know that even with eyes open, that safe space is always there. It doesn't go away. I'm just going to pull a card. What's going to speak to us today, Lee? What do you think? What's going to come?
Good vibes.
Good vibes? Well, there we are. That's some good vibes. Inspiration. So before we just kind of clear off for the day, just think about that word and everything that you've taken on board today. The clear intention of an inspirational, cleared boundary, well week ahead of you. So go forth, let us know how you get on, and look forward to joining us the next one, the 1st of December.
Thank you for joining us. Be happy and well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone.